has fallen apart, and it looks like he's headed to Arsenal. And the very latest on that is that Arsenal are hoping to wrap this up for less than 20 million euros. What's your take on, firstly, the player, and how does the signing kind of work for you in terms of the bigger plan?
I mean, in terms of the player, it fits in with the remit. I know fans are a bit impatient. We're kind of in win now mode. We want players that kind of help us deliver in the present moment, in which we hope we do. I personally think we need defensive reinforcements, whether that was going to be a centre half that could play fullback on either side, or, you know, a fullback in general. We all know the amount of minutes in the last couple of years and the injuries last season with Magalhaes and Saliba, obviously Benjamin White and the post ACL timber. Calafiori was out for a significant time. And I always tell you all the time how much I like Tomiyasu, but unfortunately his attendance for the last couple of seasons is poor. So I'm happy with the addition. When I just quickly have a quick browse of him, I think he played 37 or 38 Valencia games and things of that ilk. So first thing is availability, can play centre half as well as at right back. You look at our two main centre halves with Gabriel Magalhaes and Saliba, the players you see today or in the last few years since they've become of this level, they didn't get there overnight. So it gives me some confidence that a 20-year-old Spanish under-21s international who's done well at the UEFA under-21s championship can actually develop. And as you said there, where you look at his release clause, and naturally in the way Arsenal operate, we'll probably try and get a deal for cheaper than that. I know we're going to get onto Nordgaard, but these kind of squad fillers tells me that we're trying to save funds to go heavy for the Ezes, etc., etc. So I'm cool with it, Harry. I think we need a defensive reinforcements. When I see a 20-year-old centre-back, I'm braced for, times where he looks mature way beyond his ages, but then I'm also braced for times where he probably will drop a clanger. Like, just by watching the highlights, I think they played Deportivo and the mistake went unpunished, but he played like this under-hit pass when he was trying to gallop forward. So I expect that kind of stuff. But if we learned nothing last season, Harry, it was depth. We need depth. We need players. We need to be able to ease the burden on players. So I'm all for his signing, man. Bring him in.
Yeah, I'm all good with the depth signings as long as we make sure that we go and get those kind of marquee signings that we all know that we need. And, I've had a lot of stick over the last few days for my kind of stance on Christian Nordgaard. We'll get into that in a little bit. But this one was one that I looked at, and I'll be honest, at first, I didn't know a great deal about the player. And like you, I had a quick browse and had a quick look into him. And this might be a bit of a bold statement, but it does remind me a little bit of the Big Gabby signing, in that there is this centre-half who's
raw and unpolished.
Yeah, exactly. Raw and unpolished, still needs a bit of work, but has those physical attributes that mean that he could go on to become a real powerhouse. Another thing that I think's maybe gone under the radar in terms of some of the analysis around this player is that playing at Valencia isn't easy. I know that Valencia, it is a big club, exactly. I know that they've fallen off a little bit. I know that they're not the Valencia that we were dumped out of Europe by all those years ago with the likes of Rafa Benitez and Pablo Aimar and all the rest of it. I know they're not that Valencia anymore, but it's a club with a fan base that has such huge expectations. The size of the club means that everything you do is under immense scrutiny. And I think, although it's not the same as playing for Arsenal now, with the standard being where it is and the level of Arsenal being where it is, but it does kind of, I think, prepare you for what life under the microscope is going to be like. And of course, at Arsenal, it's under it's going to be to a greater deal and a greater extent. But I do think it's a good kind of preparation ground. So, yeah, I'm really interested in this one, really excited by it. And also, it's one of those signings where, you look at the back line and you think we're generally pretty well stocked. But with Tierney having gone, with Zinchenko likely to move on, and with Tomiyasu, I think that was the key. When you were talking about the reasons why this makes sense, the thing that really kind of resonated with me was the Tomiyasu point, because as good a player as he is, as good a 1v1 defender, he's never there. And I think as a football club, at some point, you've got to look at it and go, we can't rely on this guy fitness-wise anymore. The great thing about Tomiyasu is that he could play literally anywhere across the back line and you'd feel comfortable. But the right side of our defense, with the Timber injury that we had the year before last, and him struggling throughout periods of last season as a result of still trying to work his way back to his best, there was no Ben White available for most of it to support him and give him those breathers. There's been no Takehiro Tomiyasu. But if you bring in another right-sided centre-back, at least those two can just worry about that role, and they don't have to worry about being cover for any other part of the defence as well. So, yeah, I like this one. I think it makes a lot of sense. And for under 20 million euros, it kind of feels like the right amount you should be spending on a backup player? Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. I mean, it does. Like, I mean, clearly we wanted a centre half. I don't know how the dynamics would have worked at Arsenal had we have got Howson from Bournemouth or Victor Rice potentially in January or Mark Gurhey. So, like you said, it makes sense. I'm sure he wants to play, and I want him to come in with the mentality, as crazy as it is, that I am better than whoever plays in roles that I can occupy, and things of that ilk. But he's 20 years of age. He probably knows I'm coming into one of the best defenses in Europe against some of the best individuals. So I am going to struggle, but it's all about what you could be tomorrow, isn't it? You can clearly help us in the short and medium term. I'm quite bullish about what he could be if you iron out those rough edges in his game. So yeah, and as you said there, to reiterate, Tomiyasu, we all love him, but you can't bet on him, and we're trying to compete on all fronts. We need players that we can. So I hope I'm wrong, and we have a fit Tomiyasu, a fit Ben White, Timber, Mosquera, etc. And there's a lot of competition for places, but we need to be well stocked for next season, Harry, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We do indeed. We've learnt the hard way, haven't we? That
The hard way.
we need to have that
Alright,
depth
yeah.
for sure. But it's also about finding that balance between players that you think can develop into really kind of top players, but also that are at a level already to come in and help you. And over the last couple of windows, we've seen signings like Mikel Merino. We look like we're going to get Christian Norgard in through the door. And these are players that are slightly older, and it felt like we'd sort of not abandoned our transfer principles, but we'd kind of just conceded a little bit on the fact that maybe those players were the right fit. We've done it previously with the likes of Jorginho and Trossard and all the rest of it. But this signing for a 22-year-old feels right.
Feels on brand.
Back on track. Yeah, it feels on brand, doesn't it? You've got enough experience for people to be able to get a read for what you're like, but you're not at an age whereby, you're unwilling as a football club to really kind of make that investment in. So exactly. I think this makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk Christian Norgard. Now, I got a hell of a lot of stick on TalkSport the other night for saying
I saw the caption.
Did you see it? Yeah. I don't think that losing Thomas Partey and bringing Christian Norgard in makes Arsenal better, was my point. And a lot of people have been making the comparison between Jorginho and Norgard, and they're going, well, no, hold on. Zubimendi is in for Partey and Norgard is in for Jorginho. Now, you can frame it that way, but I prefer to frame it in a different way because Jorginho was already gone. So the options, as far as I was concerned, were either you have Martin Zubimendi and you keep Thomas Partey, or you have Martin Zubimendi and you go and sign someone else. And obviously we've gone and signed, by the looks of it, someone else. I said I'm not going to bang on about this over and over and over again anymore on the pod. I've made my point on it. So I'm more interested in your thoughts. I just wanted to give you a bit of context as to where I'm kind of coming from on this. What's your take on the Norgard signing, and how does the Thomas Partey departure affect us in your view?
Thomas Partey departure affects us because I would have loved the best of both worlds, innit? You've got Zubimendi and what he could become. You saw what Partey did last season, especially if Partey could stay fit. I felt that would have been the best option. I feel the second best option, couldn't tell you for a player, is if he was going to bring Zubimendi in and somebody better than Thomas Partey, which obviously didn't happen. I did ask the question to myself, like, even if Partey does want, rightly or wrongly, whether he wants a wage increase or we're going to give him a small uplift or whatever, is the cost of that better than actually, or does that work out cheaper than buying someone for quality, especially where we just spoke about the young Valencia lad, where we're trying to pivot and kind of budget in an appropriate way. I just saw it as a kind of pivot, if I'm honest with you, Harry. I don't think it moves the needle. I think it raises the ceiling. I don't think it makes me go, wow. I just think we've come to a head with Thomas Partey. There's clearly no agreement. We've got Norgard coming in. He's not going to break the wage budget. He's not going to break the budget in terms of a transfer fee. He is Premier League experienced. He's going to be a squad player. He kind of knows his role. I guess, for me, it's more the experience thing, because you're losing Jorginho, you're obviously losing Partey, you're bringing in a Brentford captain, but I can't say it's inspiring. I'm not going to do that Arsenal thing where we kind of gas it up to a level it's not. It is underwhelming, but I do like the speed in which clearly Partey, we haven't got any agreement over Partey. We've brought someone in, so yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'll give him a chance. I think he's decent, but yeah, we need some players that really move the needle for us, Harry, man.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a part of my reservation around this is because Christian Norgard is Christian Norgard, and as good as he's done for Brentford, there is a big step up to come from Brentford to Arsenal, and the responsibility that you're going to shoulder, whether you're a starter or not, is huge. But the other thing is the impact of Partey's departure. You know, that was probably 50% of my frustration around this. It wasn't just about Norgard. It was that we've lost this player, and you know, you want to know that you're passing the kind of baton over to someone that can really handle it. And I keep making this point about Martin Zubimendi, and again, it doesn't go down well, but I cannot look at Martin Zubimendi and say 100% that from the first day of the Premier League season, he's going to be up to speed and ready to go. Not fitness-wise, I'm not talking about that, just talking about adaptation. You know, you have to adapt coming from La Liga, playing for Real Sociedad to Arsenal. It's very, very different. And so what I fear we've done here is we've added pressure to him. And I felt 100%. like if we had Thomas Partey alongside him, someone that he could A, share the role with, share the minutes with, but B, has made that transition from Spain to England, can support him in understanding what that role entails, what that role looks like, what you can get away with in Spain and what you can't. I just felt that would have been a nice...
Putting a lot on his shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt that would have been a nice way of managing that transition. But hey, it is what it is. On the Thomas Partey thing, I know there are lots of reasons that people want to see the back of Thomas Partey, okay? We're not going to go into all the ins and outs of him. You can list off lots of things, contracts, salaries, all the rest of it. But for me, I think I can't really understand why people are outraged by the fact that he wants a pay rise. Like who in the working world at any point wants to go backwards in terms of pay?
You know how tribal football is, though, Harry, man. That's all they can see. Logic is going to be devoid. Like, I understand it, especially because he's been on the same contract since when he initially signed for the football club. Now, we all know a reason for that mainly is around injury. His quality has never been in question. It's all the other baggage. And are we going to see a consistent Partey? I can't begrudge him. A football career is short. You want to feel important, probably from his point of view. If the manager likes me that much, if I'm playing week in, week out, if he persists with me when I've really probably only had 2 seasons of prolonged fitness, I should be within my rights to ask for an increase. Now, obviously, where Arsenal are concerned, they've stuck to their guns. They've obviously offset it and said, you know what, it might be cheaper to get this guy off the wage bill and obviously bring in Norgard. And kind of piggybacking off what you said about Zubimendi, in which I second, like I'm bullish about his signing, but you're asking a lot of him from day one. Norgard can kind of help him in that kind of regards. Clearly, Bert has said, you know what, past this point, it's not making sense for Partey. And it's a weird one because right now it seems like, and I'm with it, it seems like a no-brainer to give Thomas Partey a new deal because he's shown his fitness and his quality. As you know, in football, next season, he could probably revert back to type. And you will know better than me because you do a lot of research around these things. It's felt to me like prior to this summer, Partey's been someone that we obviously internally recognize his quality and things of that ilk, but we've never pushed him out the door, but we've been open to letting him go type of thing if it makes sense. So we probably saved the wages. But as you said at the start, it's all fun and games, you know, doing cut price and all of these things. But we need to bring in certain big money additions, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
Does it feel like when you look at the business that we know Arsenal are close to completing? So Kepa Arrizabalaga in for £5 million. I'm absolutely fine with that, by the way. Backup goalkeeper. I don't think you should spend a fortune. I think it's right to look for market opportunities there. That's what we found. Then you think about Mosquera coming in, another addition to the back line, probably going to come in instead of Uriel Hato, another one that has been spoken about, but will cost half the money. So, you know, it feels like we've made a saving there. And then obviously Christian Norgard being the guy to come in and take up that vacant midfield spot. Does it feel like we are preparing, and I don't want to get people's hopes up, but does it feel like we are preparing for a big spend in the attack? Because ultimately at the start of the window, that is what people were crying out for more than anything else. Now, I talked about it a few months ago. I talked about the fact that Jorginho and Partey's contracts were running down and that there would need to be some midfield regeneration. Arsenal had obviously seen that well in advance and had gone and got Zubimendi sorted by that point. But where people really want to see the big movement and the needle moving, as you put it, is in that final third. So does it feel like the moves we are making are putting us in a position where there is now no excuse but to go out and spend big on the players that are going to really make the difference for us.
Harry, you said it there. There is no excuse. Like that's, I mean, I'm not in the, the transfer room and things of that ilk, but that's what it's telling me. Clearly, Arsenal don't have a bottomless pit of money, and we're gonna have to pivot and be a bit cute and clever. So if we're respectfully to these players cost cutting so that we can go heavy with a striker in the left winger, then that we need to do that. We all know typically, well, the game's changed. I've seen goalkeepers go for big money, but typically strikers, attackers, this is, they win games for you. They score goals and they get bums off seats. They sell shirts. We need to go heavy there, and every penny we save, it should be there. Whether it's Sesko, whether it's Gyokeres, we see anything from 60 all the way up to 100 million. I'm sure we'll get into Rodrygo, but Rodrygo's going to cost a premium. We've been linked with Eze. He's going to cost a lot of money. It's like going shopping. Respectfully to the names we've spoken about already, it's like we've gone Primark, we bought some socks, we bought some boxes. Now we need to go next door to the Gucci store and buy something nice for ourselves, which would be your striker and left winger. So I think that's where everyone's hanging their hat on, man. We need to go and do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on the striker situation, it's been quite the ride, hasn't it, already? I mean, we've read so many reports about Sesko. We've read so many reports over the last week or so about Gyokeres, and there's been a feeling that Arsenal were maybe pivoting towards him and that was going to be wrapped up. I'm not normally the guy that tries to be ITK, and I'm certainly not. But from what I've been hearing and from the conversations I've had, it feels to me very much like Benjamin Sesko is still the priority. He's still the one that Arsenal want first and foremost. He's still the one that Arsenal are hoping to get over the line. And Victor Gyokeres is there and he's an option. And I think it's right that you have an alternative in case, you're not able to complete the deal that you want. But it feels to me like Sesko's still the one. Is he the one for you?
It's a difficult one, man, because I really, really, really like Sesko. I like him a lot. I like what he could become. I like how high he can jump and how fast he can run. I know obviously fans don't really necessarily care about that. I like his mindset. He reads a lot of self-help books and does yoga and things like that. I like his general play and all the other things and facets away from being a striker that you need to do. So it makes sense. It really does make sense. Where I kind of pivot away from that is because we're kind of in win now mode. Gyokeres at this moment in time would be better for me because he's 27. There's obviously there's potential, but it's not what you could be tomorrow. You're here right now. What we see is what we kind of get. I'm not expecting Gyokeres's volume of goals from Portugal to translate in the Premier League exchange rate, as we kind of said. But Gyokeres is just a bit different. You've had some highs, you've had some lows. You're returning to the shore, being held in higher regards than typically you would have. But the one thing I would say, whether it's Gyokeres with all the goals he's getting in Portugal, whether it's Sesko, who like Zubamendi's been linked with us forever, I feel they're going to need to hit the ground running. Like they are going to need to be given an adaptation period, but fans are impatient. I think we'll go for Sesko and get him, kind of what you're saying. I just feel we've been linked with him too much. We've probably done the legwork. That was one that we was going over. I just personally think Berta's job is or remits to get Sesko over the line. If something goes left there, then you bring in Gyokeres. And it's a shame because I do like Gyokeres and I don't want to draw conclusions from social media, Harry, but it's almost like he's doing everything to get this move to London and you almost want it to happen because of him. So right now in this day and age with win now mode, I'm going with Gyokeres. I think Sesko's a one that I think many, like the masses of Arsenal fans would have probably been more happy with like 2 or so years ago. But Sesko's the one that I think we bring in if I had to put money on it.
You almost want to be flattered a little bit, don't you, as a football club and as football fans as well? Like, you're right to say that, like, Gyokeres, it sounds like he's doing everything he possibly can to make this move happen. His agent seems to be doing a lot as well.
Another one.
Whereas with Sesko, some of the noises coming out have been a little bit negative, like him supposedly, and let me be clear, we don't know that this is true, but supposedly demanding a release clause be put in his contract, supposedly demanding crazy wages. All of that is, it doesn't exactly show him and his sort of representatives in the best possible light. But I think you've got to take that stuff with a pinch of salt because ultimately we really don't know the ins and outs of it.
A lot of whispers.
I think my problem with the whole Sesko thing is that it's not that I don't want him. I would slightly prefer Gyokeres on a personal level, but from a club's perspective, I can understand why Sesko is probably seen as a better and longer term investment. So I get that. There's not much in between them for me. So whichever one we land on, I'll be okay with it. But I think with Sesko, considering these links have been there for such a long time, The fact that there's so little noise around it is really hard to read. Like there's no updates whatsoever, nothing of substance anyway. So it's kind of like, well, is that a good thing? Is the fact that it's all being kept under wraps
Is
a
it the
really
calm
good
before the
thing?
storm?
Is it the calm before the storm? Or is it because there's just no progress on it? I don't know. And listen, I'll be honest, I got in touch yesterday with someone on Benjamin Sesko's team representative and asked the question, but I got no comment. I literally got the answer.
Oh, I thought he was going to say he's signing.
No. I got the answer back. I got a message back saying we're unable to comment. Now he didn't exactly shut it down, so for that reason, it feels like there's still something in that, and maybe it's going to happen. I wish I had one of those massive exclusives, but I was hoping for that. All I got was a kind of sorry, I'm unable to comment, which is fair enough. I get it, right?
But that's an answer in itself,
yeah,
man.
Well, there you go. There you go. There was a smiley face on the end of the message as well. So who knows? Who knows? Right. Yeah, I still think Sesko is the priority. Whether that's what people want or not, I don't know. But look, we're going to take a really, really short pause. When we come back, we're going to talk Eberechi Eze, and we're going to compare him to Rodrygo. Who would be the better fit at Arsenal? But before we do that, really, really brief pause, as I say, and we're going to roll you a clip from our Martin Zubimendi scouting video that we put out on Patreon just earlier this week. That will give you an idea of what we do over there if you're interested, because we've got 2 more coming up over the course of the weekend. We've got a Christian Norgard one, and we've got a Mosquera one. So here's a clip from the Martin Zubimendi scouting video that we did. Check it out. He certainly enjoys getting stuck into the challenges, which I didn't think was necessarily a characteristic of Martin Zubimendi's game. Now, I appreciate and accept that in La Liga, it's different. This is him against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Look at that. Again, riding challenges, taking his time and picking out the right pass in the end. That's a lovely win back. Look at that. One sweep out to the left-hand side. He's not just won the ball back there, but he's managed to sweep it out to the left-hand side nice and early. Again, more of these diagonals out to the left-hand side nice and early. Look at that. Takes his time, turns, and then releases just at the right point. Again, taking it in his stride. Brilliantly done. Again, stepping in front of the ball receiver. And that comes from having good anticipation. That was a short clip from our Martin Zubimendi scouting video over on Patreon, which you can check out. The link is in the description below. Okay, let's do the Eberechi Eze stuff. So it was reported yesterday by a number of sources in the end. It originally came, I think, from, was it from Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook? I want to be accurate here. But then obviously a couple of others picked it up afterwards and sort of ran with the story as well. First of all, what's your reaction to these links?
I love Eze, I'll be real, Harry. I like Eze, man. I know the first thing I would say is somewhat irrelevant, but he's a former academy guy. Bring him home. We all see he's Premier League proven. He's just won a trophy with Crystal Palace. He's 27 or so, or something of that ilk. He's versatile, whether he's going to play an 8, a 10, or probably off that left-hand side for us. He's got all the characteristics we're lacking. He's a player that's going to get bums off seats, a player that draws attackers to him. I personally feel I'm going a bit left, but I think another key reason beyond the obvious we need to upgrade our front line is because if you've got Saka on the right, someone of equal ability, or someone that's also a good player in their own right, and a striker, they can't double and triple up against all of them. There's not enough players on the pitch, and we all see what happens with Saka. I mean, we need players with stardust. We need players that I think will play better when they're around good players. Respectfully to those at Crystal Palace, he would have that at Arsenal. I am so in front of this Eze thing. I really want Eze. I don't want to skip ahead and talk about Rodrygo, but it does give a lot of food for thought. But if it's up to me, go and get Eze done. Again, we were speaking on rumors. I don't want to, put out misinformation, I guess, but there's also rumors that they want, the release clause in his contract. They're more than happy to pay in installments. So I can't say I would do that for us Crystal Palace, or I believe that. But if that does, it's fuel to the fire. But my thing, Harry, would be, how much do Arsenal like Eze? I'm not saying they don't think he's a good player. How much do they like him? We tried to get Nico Williams. That one's not happening. Rodrygo, you're kind of reliant on a lot of dominoes to kind of fall before we get that. And at what point are you going to say, by all means, go after Rodrygo? But at what point, I don't know, let's say July the 7th, if you haven't been given enough positive signals that Rodrygo is open to this move, when are you going to pivot? So that brings you down to Eze. If you're not able to get Eze, then it or Rafael, like some fans would say, do you start to now go for the young kind of inside forwards with scope to get better? I don't know, but bring Eze, Harry, man, bring him. That's what we need.
I really like him. 8
Love
goals,
him.
8 assists in 34 Premier League appearances last season. He got another 4 goals in the FA Cup, and we all know how significant some of those goals were in terms of Crystal Palace winning the thing. 2 goals, 2 assists in 4 EFL Cup appearances as well. So he had a really, really productive season. Really did. I think a real good point that you made there is with regards to the release clause. There are some reports claiming that release clause can be paid in 3 installments of 20 million, and that the 8 million pounds is made up of performance related add-ons. So it feels like financially it's the type of deal that Arsenal would probably prefer. It makes sense. It feels very, very Arsenal, doesn't it? But I guess you're right in that if Rodrygo is the number one, how long do you kind of leave this before you make that pivot and that change? And you know, while we're on Rodrygo, he didn't start again for Real Madrid last night in the Club World Cup. And some people would maybe tell you that we're reading into that stuff a little bit too much. Xabi Alonso said the other day that he was left out for technical reasons. I don't know, like, if I'm Rodrygo and I feel underappreciated at Real Madrid, which is how the rumors went a little while ago, you'd have thought that with Carlo Ancelotti going, that would have maybe changed things. And maybe Rodrygo would have been given that kind of opportunity to prove himself again. It doesn't feel like, despite what he's saying, Xabi Alonso really kind of fancies him too much. But he has got to push this. I've been saying this from day one, from the beginning of the kind of links. The thing I've always been consistent on is, if Rodrygo is going to come to Arsenal, Rodrygo has to make it happen.
Exactly.
Because he has to apply pressure on Real Madrid for them to even come to the negotiating table. And if he does that, then who knows, maybe an agreement can be reached. But I guess the question, DG, is how long do you wait? You know, at what point does it become critical? At what point do you have to just press the eject button on that potential deal and turn your attentions elsewhere? We keep talking about Berta speaking to loads of different people all at once. But, you know, I don't know with Rodrygo. I rated it as a 4 out of 10 in terms of likelihood earlier on in the window. And I haven't really moved on that, I don't think.
I think you're right, Harry, man. Like, I mean, if I'm a positive omen, I hope so, because I didn't think we were going to get Declan Rice, Aubameyang, Mesut Ozil, or Alexis. So hopefully my track record works out positively. I think, you know what, it's going to sound mad, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but where you look at the things we've spoken about so far, like defensive reinforcements, especially around pre-season, where you get a chance to learn what Arteta demands, central midfield, which is a key component in the modern day. Clearly, we need a striker. It feels, quote unquote, and don't misquote me, people, and don't shoot the messenger, if one signing was to drag into, you know, the Premier League season until like September, it probably could be the left-hand side, because you still have Trossard and Martinelli. I'm not saying I don't want to upgrade, but that could kind of drag. But as you said there, Harry, man, how long do you keep this up? And when is Rodrygo going to make it abundantly clear? Because it's not like Real Madrid are struggling financially and they want to sell players. I just think Rodrygo just wants a bit of encouragement. I think he's open to leaving. Is Xavi Alonso saying, do you know what? See, I'm going to give you football. Just relax. Just wait. You're going to get your time. It's only the Club World Cup. And he's giving him something in that regard. Is it like the calm before the storm? I don't want to, you know, I'm no ITK, but you would imagine to some degree Arsenal, or via middlemen, are in some level of negotiations or just being kept, you know, up to date with what's going on with Rodrygo. But as you said there, he's got to make it abundantly clear. Either Xabi Alonso's got to say, you're not going to get the football you think you're going to get at Real Madrid. Real Madrid want to sell you for some financial reasons, or with a heavy heart, Rodrygo wants to leave. And I don't think he's at that moment. I think it has to be made abundantly clear to him, and it will be an interesting one. For me, I do think isolated to Rodrygo, that is something that could drag until deadline day. For us, for me, probably the first week of preseason, second week of preseason. If there's not enough positive signals around Rodrygo, let's just keep it moving. Whether that is an Eze, whether that is, I think he's not going to sign for us, but Jamie Gittins, or we pivot away, because that is something we've done in the past. We've chased one player. It's felt like an improbable task. We haven't got it, and then we're kind of just sat on our hands. So I just think too much dominoes need to fall for Rodrygo. And financially, I'm no accountant, but you're going to have to pay big money. You're going to have to give him big wages. We're already paying out big wages, and certain new deals need to be done. So, yeah, man, probably 2-3 weeks, if that. But that is probably the position we could drag Harry, if I'm honest.
I do agree with that. I think that's a really, really good point. If there's one position whereby we're okay for now and we can afford to start the season without getting that kind of player in, it is that left wing. You're right. I agree with you, because there we're upgrading. We're not replacing. We're not trying to fill a hole. We are literally just looking to upgrade. And I mean, as much as people have kind of been big on the left wing stuff this summer, Trossard and Martinelli aren't bad options, are they? Like, I feel like they've got a bit of a rough ride. And in terms of the analysis over the course of the summer so far, it feels like they've been a little bit disrespected, and from me as well, you know, from everybody. I guess,
Guilty as well.
Yeah, well, we're all guilty in some way, aren't we? I guess, look.
I can't act totally then, though, yeah. Especially Trossard, to be fair.
The big question then is, if it were down to you, is it Rodrygo or is it Eze? Because reading between the lines, it sounds like you're Rodrygo, but you don't really think that that's likely. But let's say both were possible. Which player are you picking?
Some questions you shouldn't ask, Harry. In an ideal world, if both are feasible, I'm going to say Rodrygo, man. I know he's not played in the Premier League and it's big money. And to be fair, as much as I like him, I don't know if you're kind of the main man or one of the main men, if you're going to perform to that ilk. But I know it sounds fickle, Harry, but I just want to see us spend money, man. I would love to have that star. I remember how it felt for me when we got Alexis Sanchez, when we got Ozil, to a degree, Aubameyang and Declan Rice. I feel the fans need a bit of that. And obviously, good players can come everywhere. You can find